Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Old Mood Podcast, episode 41. It is 41. It is 41.
Yes.
Man,
Yep.
I don't know why I even thought about it. It was definitely 40 last week. All right, we're good. I am your host, Blue Squadron, and as always, joined by my two co-hosts here. We'll start with Jay-Kun this week.
Hi, my name is Jay-Kun.
Oh my God.
I'm Wisame with 765 gear score. I do a lot of endgame TD content such as Olin's Valley, the dungeons. I'm currently working on getting back into bartering and possibly going for the null. It's the last treasure that I need. And you can find me over at twitch.tv/JaykunVTV before the T.
All right, Jay, there was a moment there where you paused abnormally long after the word hi, and I thought that's all you were going to give us. Like, and I'm joined with Jay-Kun, you were just, hi.
Hi.
Your little raccoon just did the, and then you were done.
Hi.
Okay. And Blonde Bear?
Hi. I'm
Stop.
Blonde Bear.
Stop, bro. There ain't no way.
Still working on my LVI and, still working on the Elden's piece, having a good old time. Playing Scholar. Playing a lot of Scholar. It's very fun.
Really? You're really enjoying Scholar?
I really am enjoying Scholar. I got the new Verkant on her. I bought some weight, and honestly, she's very, very comfy.
Wait, did you roll the new Verkant to her, or did you just make another?
No, I made my second one. I was thinking about making the second one for the Shy, but I ended up making it on the Scholar. It looks really clean.
Dude, you're crazy.
I like it.
Did you know that the voice actor for Scholar is playing BDO? And,
yeah, I saw that.
And Wutaru invited her to the Discord that we're all in, and we actually got to. I wasn't there, but they all got to talk to her, and I'm like jealous. What?
That's so cool.
I know.
That's really cool.
That's crazy. Yeah, he sent me. I forgot he actually sent me her info and stuff. She's streaming on Twitch too sometimes as well.
Oh my God.
Which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I know, which is actually pretty cool. I've been having a lot of fun with Scholar as well, but I have not been able to play as much, admittedly, just because I want this pesky flame just won't drop for me like it will for some people. It's driving me nuts. Like I'm on a speedrun because tonight's the last night of the event. Disclaimer of alert: you have to pull your coffers out tonight, or you lose like 5 billion silver. If you haven't already gotten your A-Tour shoes, I know both Jay and Blonde are like, that sounds like a you problem. We got our flames like a month and a half ago. Like, okay, buddy. But like for the end game players that have not gotten their flames yet, they absolutely have to pull their coffers out tonight. Okay. Let's go to the subject that everybody wants to talk about. There are some big suggestions on the Global Labs for changes to the game, especially in PvP. And for the very first time, really in the history of the game, I think, we are seeing the developers actually ask the player base for feedback based on a set of options. They're asking us what we would like the most out of the 3 options. So have you guys caught yourselves up to speed with the various options here and what's going on?
Yeah.
Yes. But for the listeners who haven't, can you summarize it for us?
Yeah. I was gonna be like, Jay, do you know? He's like, that's a PvP thing. That's all you, big dog.
I do.
That's all you, big dog.
Did some research.
So there are 3 options for the direction that the developers want to go with PvP. The very first option involves basically, it's tough because it's a Korean interpreted thing, but essentially what they're looking at doing is adding more protections to the game, like they were thinking about doing, not like the first patch necessarily, but like adding a few more protections, but then adding gaps in the protection, whether there's, you lose SA at the end of the skill, or maybe you lose frontal guard. It's not frontal guard at the start of the skill, but it is frontal guard at the end of the skill. So there would be just natural gaps in the protections of your skills. The second option is to scale back the amount of super armors in the game in favor of more frontal guards. So instead of, Succession Berserker, not to point any fingers, but directly at Blonde Bear. So for Succession Berserker, particularly, very super armor heavy class, they would scale back 1 or 2 of those super armors and make them frontal guards instead. Okay? And the third option, and perhaps the most controversial option, is to keep all of the current changes that are on the Global Labs, which is adding super armors, adding frontal guards, etc. But then adding a grab to every single class in the the game, which is kind of a wild suggestion. So like, I'm curious what your guys' thoughts. I have stronger opinions on this. I am a PvPer, so I'll save my thoughts for last. I'm curious as PvEers, you don't necessarily speak in terms of PvP, but like, how do you guys look at this? Like, obviously this has an impact on you guys too. Jakun, where are you leaning on this?
So I guess let's like just I just want to clarify something on method, like the option 1. You mentioned it was like gaps, but I guess how I interpreted it was it's like ignore super armor or ignore forward guard. Can we clarify that? Because
oh yeah, so the very first option also includes like there would be some gaps on your skills, but then there's some wording in there that makes us think that like there's skills that would maybe shoot through a frontal guard.
Yeah,
or hit you out of super
like
armor.
The flame tower.
Right.
Yeah, the flame tower, you know how like it hits. Yeah, that's how I interpreted it.
Correct.
And so like to discuss that, like, you know, when as a PvE player, it's like, you know, I think it's a little bit frustrating that, you know, certain mobs can ignore your protections. Like, you know, the boss splits bosses ignore that. The mobs from Ataraxian and bosses in Ataraxian ignore super armor and forward guard sometimes. The field bosses and whale bosses. So I can imagine it would be a little bit more frustrating. Definitely frustrating if that element was added into a PvP setting, you know?
Yeah.
And then
right.
I just want to discuss about like method 3, where everybody, you know, is mostly protected and has a grab. You know, this was probably the proposal that got the most polarizing responses from what I've seen of people really either wanting this change or absolutely despising this change. For me, as much as I know how powerful grabs are and have been on the receiving end of grabs for many years, in game and IRL, I think in the long run it would create a very difficult game to maybe balance if classes were designed and centered around everyone having a grad. So I'm not the biggest fan of this one, but for option 2, I kind of really like the idea of exchanging. From what I understand from the wording, it says we're exchanging super armors for more forward guards. And I think forward guards really reward players who understand good positioning of their character. You know, you're only protected from the front side, obviously, because forward guard. So players who position carefully and have good map awareness will stay protected, but also allows for counterplay where if the opponent has better positioning and map awareness than you do, you will get CC from behind. So this also translates into PvE, where if you position yourself correctly, you can have really good survivability in PvE. So I think this proposal has the most impact on PvE. And as a PvE player, so this is the one I'm leaning more towards.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, like, I think that the majority of people are kind of leaning towards that second option as well. For similar reasons. Blonde, where's your positioning on this? I know you have thoughts before the podcast here.
It's kind of complicated because as someone who just kills monsters, like these options are kind of like, oh, okay, like not really something that really bothers me or interests me. I guess technically, like if they're gonna rebalance like super armors, frontal guards, that would kind of change some grind spots. But then they've adjusted grind spots before when it comes to CC mechanics and resistances and certain stuff like that. I mean, they literally just changed the dynamic of crypt to go from an accuracy needing spot to an AP spot. So I think option 2, if they're only going to give us the 3 options, option 2 is like the only realistic one. But it's kind of tough because I've asked a few different discords and a bunch of different communities. I don't even know how much they're PvPers as much, but just people that have perspectives on the game. And a lot of people are wanting a 4th option. There are some people that like want option 2 out of the 3 options, but there's quite a few people that think there should be a 4th option that I've seen. There's some people that think that the balancing in general needs to be something more looked at rather than the options. But if I'm going to lean in any direction, it's definitely not going to be 1 or 3. It's probably going to be number 2. But I don't know. It's kind of a tough pigeonhole.
So you mentioned like option 4. Like what were the option 4s that people were suggesting?
That was kind of the frustrating part, is that like their option quote unquote 4 for so many different groups of people means like so many different things. Some people think that they really shouldn't adjust things right now. They should just be adjusting individual outlier classes. And I think that on a large idea, like most people can kind of agree with that. When you have a class that like only has like protection in their movement, and then you have a lot of these newer classes where they're like fully protected on a lot of their abilities and combos and movement and everything else, I feel like it kind of takes away from some other classes. But I'm not an expert PvPer, so I can't say one way or the other. I just know that this is is a hot topic for a lot of people because class design and class, like what the design of the class that PA has and the class identity is inherently tied into the movement or the like the protection of a class too. Like you have some of these crazy fast classes where they need to be like super armor protected through all their movement, and then when they're actually doing something, like they're not protected. Like that's the point, is that they're moving. So like I've seen the comments saying that, oh well, if option 2 is taken, then we need to adjust the really fast classes or stuff like that. That's been the main comment I've seen.
Yeah,
it's kind of tough.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's tougher, especially when you don't have necessarily the PvP background. As someone that does have a really big PvP background, especially in like the large scale PvP sense, I would say that my first impressions on it were, I'll take one of the two options. I think option 3 is out of the question. I don't think that you can do option 3, just from a practicality sense. Trying to add all of the protections that they were adding to the global labs in the first place, and then adding grabs essentially makes the meta, okay, well, no one is ever going to get CC'd unless it's by a grab, right? And so like that's not PvP and that's not fun, so you can't have that. So I think that the PvP community pretty universally agrees that option 3 is a disaster and shouldn't be done. However, the idea of adding a grab to every class and then maybe nerfing the mobility down on some of the classes is actually one I kind of like very much. I actually lean, I don't mind if they go with option 1 or option 2. I like option 1 primarily just because, and I'm in the minority on this. I like option 1, and the majority of the reason I like this is because a skill that could get through a frontal guard is something that would help a tremendous amount of classes. It would make, for example, warrior fightable. You know, it would make a Valkyrie fightable. You can't just stand and block and then just grab somebody, right? Like it's like it adds more dynamic to the game. You'd have to be very careful with it because like the block is a very fundamental aspect of a lot of kits. But like, so like if you just made it like one skill that could crash through a frontal guard and get a CC down, but it was like, you know, every like 15 seconds or something, I think would be pretty reasonable to give the classes in the game. It also gives non-grab classes a way to kind of play around those grab classes, and then it makes grab classes think like, okay, I have to bait out that skill and I have to use a super armor during it, you know, because it doesn't do any damage, but like also it'll CC me through my frontal guard if I just stand and block like an idiot. So I like that option. I think it actually adds more counterplay to the game. I think it makes it very interesting. I don't like the idea of keeping the changes that are currently on the global lab. So I don't like option 1 if they're just going to keep what's on the global labs and then kind of add these extra things to it. Again, I think that like there's just too much protection on the global lab. I think you just need to scale that back a little bit. Sure, you can add some protections to every class, but like you can't go too crazy with it. And then you got to keep it in bounds when it comes to trying to balance the rest of it. I think the majority of the PvP community likes option 2. I like option 2 as well. The idea of scaling back some of the frontal guards in the game, scaling back some of the super armors in the game and then adding frontal guards is a W idea in most cases. I do think that there are some classes that you're gonna have to adjust on a special case, like Awakening Witch, for example, who doesn't have any protection against grabs, and then if you change Voltaic to a frontal guard, for example, or like one of her fundamental cores, Thunderstorm, to a frontal guard, the class is dead. Like there's actually just nothing you can do in PvP. I think that the biggest problem with option 2 is that it favors way too much of the flanking assassins. I think that all flanking assassins,
mobility.
I think that all flanking assassins in the game benefit far more than all of the other classes in the game. Valkyries, warriors, like any guardians, witches, wizards, anyone that has to come at you from the front is going to have a much harder time with option 2. Anyone that plays a ninja, a kuno, a megu, a wusa, etc., is probably going to like option 2 because they can just jump. Oh sweet, a frontal guard is not actually a protection against a sork. It is what, like, you know, like what are you supposed to do if you're throwing a, like, everybody knows when you're fighting a melee, you're like, okay, you're waiting for her to try to get behind you, and then you have to try to super armor. Well, if you're taking away a lot of the super armors, well, the flanking assassins just go crazy with it. So like, I like option 1 more than I like option 2, but I think I'm in the minority on that. I think that a lot of people I've heard like option 2, but as Blonde said, there's a big part of the community that likes an option 4. And I started talking about this when I first went over the global lab patches on my in my like global lab patch note rundown. I said, well, actually, I think that it would be cool to kind of do option 1 or 2, but also do I don't mind adding a grab to every class. I think that that would be fun.
Oh.
And then nerfing the mobility on some of the classes. I think that's totally fun. I think that that gives counterplay to some of the classes that maybe just have not had a grab or a defense. Especially if we're going to go with option 2. You're talking about making any class that has to stand in super armor a lot weaker. Like a lot weaker. Like you're talking about making the flanking assassins, most of who have grabs, or can just blink behind you. Even if they don't have a grab, you're just making them all stronger. So, like, I don't mind giving everyone a grab in that case, or at least giving the classes a grab that didn't maybe benefit as much from the patch. So, I'm curious, what are your guys' options on, or what are your guys' thoughts on the grab specifically? If you take away the other part of option 3, I know that, Jay, you had stronger feelings about it, but what if they did it in a different way?
So I was actually discussing this idea with my chat about the of changing grabs to be maybe it's like a conditional thing. You can only use it if somebody's stunned or somebody is knocked down. Like a conditional grab, it can only be used as like a follow-up CC rather than a CC catch. And maybe that's a way to tone down the power of grabs, but still have them relevant as a follow-up for the CC. Again, I this is just like speaking from like a outside point of view. So
initial problems I see with that, Lon. Okay, so Succession Lon, I'm just going to throw out, this is the first class that comes to mind. Succession Lon becomes a serious problem there because she can just stand in permanent super armor basically all the time. So not having a way to grab something like that, it would be difficult, right? So like not being able to initiate with a grab on these very heavily super armored classes would be difficult. I think maybe if they did take away a fair amount of the super armors in the game on oppressive classes like Lon and Succession Berserker, I think that maybe yes, you could go forward with grabs being a not so initiatory, not so much initiative oriented, so much as just a follow-up CC. And I think that honestly, I like that change. I think that it requires a different change for. I think it would require option 2, and then a follow-up change to grabs in option 3, which, by the way,
maybe it's all a mix. We can mix a 1, 2, 3 equals 4. You know.
Yeah. Which, by the way, again, makes flanking assassins even better. Like that kind of a change where you can't initiate with grabs. Sorks are like, you bet your sweet bippies we want that. You know what I mean? like every flanking assassin in the game is gonna love a change like that. So like I'm worried that the assassin meta is gonna get a little out of control if and when they go with option 2, because I honestly, like I said, the overwhelming majority have said option 2 that I have seen. We have the United Nations tonight, so we will have Korea's PvP scene and Korea's perspective on it, and then I think Armin and Frosty will be in there as well, and then myself, and then Bro Bear will be there to translate, with Champion Jason representing EU. Maybe we might be able to get one more EU rep in there, but like I'll get more of an idea of what the rest of the PvP scene looks like. But I've been kind of peeping around to all the major discords. Most people want option 2. I am concerned that most people that I hear suggesting this play flanking assassins. like it's, they're like, oh yeah, of course, let's just do that. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my god. So yeah, it is a little concerning, but Blonde, how do you feel about adding grabs to other classes as a berserker and somebody that really has been putting the W in Gwab for the last 5 years? How do you feel about everyone being able to do that to you now?
I think that as a berserker that only PvEs and doesn't really PvP or anything, I think that if you're gonna add grabs to all these classes in the game, you inherently have to nerf again their identity. Like there are classes, for example, like Megu, who can like literally teleport and create clones, then teleport back to the clone, and has like really crazy fluid nonstop movement. Imagining as annoying as her movement is with a grab would just be irritating, super irritating.
It would be.
There's a lot of other classes, for example, like Musa Meiwas having their crazy movement. Imagine, and already the stub arrow can be kind of annoying, right? But imagine them being able to grab you. I feel like you'd have to inherently nerf the kits. I think that it's just not a realistic option. Like, if we're just gonna have like some crazy, just okay, whatever mode, we're just gonna go wild and everybody gets everything and we're just gonna have a crazy old time, sure. But I think that at that point, if you just want to play a class with the grab, then play a class with the grab. If that's what you want, you know, if you're like voting for that option, just play the class with the grab. Like, you know, you can make half the female characters look the same. You can make some of the male characters look the same. Just play the one that has the grab if that's what you're really interested in. Yeah.
So your
I think you just
solution
have...
your solution to grabs is to, well, just play a class with a grab, idiot.
I mean, yeah. I don't think adding a million grabs to the game is the cure, because imagine how much you like a class that maybe doesn't have a grab and you love the movement and all the feel of, like, you know, what your class does, and then imagine it getting a grab and then they nerf what makes the class fun, which is the identity and the movement and the feeling and the flow. That would make me miserable. I would be so upset. For example, if Zerker didn't have a grab, I would be upset if I had to get a bunch of stuff changed in my class just to get a grab, something that maybe I'm not even interested in, especially if you're, I mean, not even interested in PvP. Like, that would be pretty irritating. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, they did say, to be clear, to preface this, they did say that if they did add grabs to all the classes, they would have to nerf mobility on several classes.
I mean,
so they did talk about scaling the mobility down, especially on like Mewa Musa, etc.
Yeah. A lot of the feedback that but that would, like, again, take away the whole, again, almost identity, or half the identity of the class, which is, I mean, sure, the people that don't play it are like, yeah, I don't care, but the people that do play it are probably going to be pretty upset. A lot of the feedback I've seen that it's just like option 1 and 3 are basically the same, and then the only... It's just complex. There's so many, like, further changes that have to change. I think more people are on the total agreement that maybe they should just adjust classes. If we have a current game where, you know, we're riddled with super armor, so the only way to, like, get someone is a grab, so then the solution is give everyone a grab. Why don't we just adjust super armors? But then, you know, certain high mobility block jump classes will be then stronger because not everybody's sitting in these things, and, you know... I think that just adjusting the game, but when I asked a few different Discords their feedback on stuff, everybody was like, well, I think people just don't really remember prior to full super armor BDO what non-super armor BDO game is.
Like, the reason remembers.
Pepperidge Farm remembers. The reason why PA, like, flew into this, like, high SA meta is because everybody hated getting CC'd and having a million gaps in all their stuff.
That is correct,
like,
sir. So
then they made everyone permanent protected based on the feedback. And what's exactly going to happen after option 2 is that same thing's going to happen. We're going to go from, like, you know, not every class is fully super armored up, right? But a lot of the classes that are going to be PvPing, they're going to be like, wow, this game sucks. I get caught out so much. It's not a skill game anymore. I don't have any skills to use. I can't do anything. And they're going to give that feedback, and then PA is going to want to revert the changes. Then we're back to basically where we already are.
Now, I will say, to be fair, I was there when they changed PvP the first time. And, like, added a bunch more protections to the game. And I will say that as a veteran player that's been through all of these changes and all this stuff, I have never seen a greater exodus of PvP players from the game than that patch. Than the patch where they added all of those protections. I saw an overwhelming percentage of PvPers just leave the game. Yeah. And so, like, I think returning to a meta where people are less protected might actually bring more PvPers back to the game again.
I think maybe in some cases, I think that there's just too many different types of players. Protected. We have players that have played the game since launch that have been through it all. We have players that came, like, midway through, and then they've also came back to, like, new players, where we've had players that only played in the last 1 to 2 to 3 years that have no idea. So they think maybe, oh, we need to remove all this stuff because, like, you guys have no idea. It's way better if, like, it's more skill dependent. But then everybody's then going to complain about desync and gaps, and then that's going to be the main complaint, and we're not going to get any actual changes done to classes. Like, I think I mentioned this on the last podcast when we were talking, like, looking at a class dynamic of, like, okay, we've got, you know, 5 abilities of super armors, we got 1 grab, we've got 2 frontal guards, and then looking at the class identity to adjust maybe those super armors or adjust maybe this or that. But I think regardless, people base their PvP combos around being able to extend their super armors, being able, like, that's the whole skill of learning your class and doing those extensions and combos. I think people are always going to be doing whatever they can to, you know,
I agree.
find out how to play their class in a certain way that I think it's just PA really has to take a hard bunker stance and just figure out what philosophy they want for the game. Maybe get some opinions from quote unquote expert PvPers and look at that. But
no more bunker.
But it can't happen. It won't
no
happen.
more bunker. Blonde, they've been living in the bunker. Our biggest problem lately is that they've been sitting in a bunker, refusing to listen to anyone for the last like 2 years, particularly the worst in the last 6 months. Get the fuck out of the bunker. They're the bunker, dude. I don't want a bunker approach again.
I just feel like rapid changes are going to upset more players and cause more dissonance rather than them looking at what the direction philosophically they want the game to look at and then taking some expert opinions and then just doing the game.
Well, they're asking.
But even this 3-option problem, I've seen people still not liking any of the options and wanting a 4th option, which I agree.
There's always going to be people that want a 4th option. Always.
But it's like, what are we looking for? Are we looking for the majority of players? Are we looking for the majority of the PvPers? Or are we looking for expert opinions? Are we only looking at it from the professional perspective? Like, if you looked at a pie chart of all the decisions of what people want, it's not evenly divided, but there's a lot of different slices on what people want. Depending on what class you play, depending on what content you do, there's what 3 or 4 different caps of Node Wars and Sieges, and we have AOS, and we have Open World, and we have RBF, 2 different RBFs. And then we're going to be getting the 15-15 guild.
Actually,
and we're going to get the 300-300. Well, there's what?
Actually, there's 3 different RBFs.
That's right. There's the capped one, isn't there?
There's there's Garmoth.
Nobody.
Well, there's 4.
Oh, there's
Garmoth, Castle Ruins, Valencia. He didn't even remember. He's like, oh yeah, the capped one. No, I mean Garmoth.
Stuff that nobody plays, right?
Omega
like all of this stuff needs to be adjusted, and they have to figure out what game mode we're going to balance things on, and then kind of go from there. And I think that also with us having like crazy ping and desync, the game that Korea gets or develops for Korea is never going to be the game that we get. And then when we give them feedback based on how our servers and desync and the game is, it's just going to create this amalgamation product when we get it. I'm just saying.
So one thing I would counter with is that like there is always going to be people that don't agree with what you're doing necessarily, right? Sure. And like you said, there always has to be a vision there. But going in a bunkered approach is what they have been doing for years, and I hate this approach. No more bunker. I like that they're asking the PvP community what we want instead of just, we're going to put this on the global labs, and then a week later they're all going to get it regardless of what they say. That's the bunkered approach. I like this approach where they're just asking us for options. Of the options, I think that, like, I would stray away, like, the best option I would see is, honestly, instead of giving every class a grab and having to adjust mobility and all this crazy shit, and again, to serve your point of, all right, well, we don't really want to hurt them, like the identity of some of these classes, I would say, okay, how about we combine option 1 and option 2 then, and we turn super armors into frontal guards, but then you also give some of the classes, not all of the classes necessarily, but some of them that struggle without, grabs, like Awakening Witch, for example, not Sork, because the classes that can get behind frontal guards without too much problem, they don't need this. But like classes that can't just get behind a frontal guard, I think you should give them a way to go through it. I think that is more reasonable. So like, no, we don't have a grab, but like we have one skill every 15 seconds that could go through a frontal guard. So if we play it really well and we wait for them to throw out a frontal guard and we use this skill, bam, we get a CC. I think that makes block classes a little bit more fair to play against. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Jay?
So you said you wanted to give Witch a grab. Is that what you said earlier? Because I was like,
no, not necessarily. No. To be clear, not necessarily. I said if we gave, there's 2 options here. Like there's 2 options that I would be okay with outside of just adding option 2 or adding option 1, which we already discussed. But like if you wanted to talk about something like adding grabs or 4th option, I don't mind adding a grab to every class in the game so long as you also adjusted mobility on those classes. Not just, I didn't even mention which, but like when it comes to like this topic here, I'm asking you if there's a way, if we can add option 1 and option 2 together, where some of the classes in the game have a way to break through a frontal guard, like Awakening Witch.
Okay, so that's
so
okay.
some of the classes in the game get that, but like the classes that are already good at jumping behind frontal guards, Awakening Megu, Sork, Ninja, Kuno, etc. Those classes don't get the ability to break through a frontal guard, but the classes that are already going to struggle with that, yes, you give them the ability to kind of break through once every 15 or so seconds, kind of like a grab, right? Because the grabs all have 15-second cooldowns as well.
Yeah, so actually, this kind of reminds me of when I was like reading. Have you guys read Divios's little
Manifesto?
Not little, but his manifesto to. So there was this one line that it really like resonated with me, which was yeah, when he mentioned that balance requires like a give and a take, and that when you buff classes, there needs to also be a nerf somewhere, right? I think players need to understand that classes can have their own strengths and weaknesses, and that's okay. And I don't think every class should be strong in every piece of
scenario.
BDO. Yeah, because I remember this one discussion I had a long time ago with somebody about Awakening Witch, saying how they couldn't beat a striker that was contesting their spot at Star's End in 2020, and they were saying how Awakening Witch needs buffs to be able to deal with 1v1s better. And I was like, I was trying my best to be like supportive and be like, hey, maybe Awakening Witch wasn't built for dueling or 1v1s and performs better in other content. And then I said, like, aren't you doing pretty well in like node wars and stuff? And he was like, yeah, I am. And then I'm like, so
yeah,
well,
there's like a hero complex of like people thinking they should be able to do everything. If they have enough skill, they should be able to do everything. But that's not the case for the game, and that's okay.
Jay's absolutely right.
It's the other way around.
The problem is that the pendulum is gonna swing too far. We're already at a point. I'm gonna use Witch as an example because she's in a bad spot where Awakening Witch in large scale PvP is garbage. It's complete fucking garbage. The only thing that makes Awakening Witch good in large scale PvP is protected area and the fact that you can heal. But there is absolutely no reason to play that over the Succession counterpart. Awakening Witch is garbage in large scale PvP. It is probably the worst class in the game in AOS. I would rather have a Shy on my team than an Awakening Witch for sure. Like I would rather have an Archer on my team than an Awakening Witch. But like aside from that, and then 1v1s, obviously it's already one of the worst classes in the game. So like this isn't really just being like, well, your class can't be good at everything. Well, it has to be good at something.
Yeah,
so
that's kind of what I was gonna try to lead into. So maybe because like what you just mentioned before was that she was not doing too hot in all these contents. Maybe they should the solution might be to lean her more towards something that she can be good at, right? And give her
large
more,
scale, right?
Yeah, large scale. Yeah, that's
that's
how I personally. Yeah. So maybe that's
but I
what
think
they should do.
Yeah, well, I think that adding an ability to break. Let's be honest. If Witch gets one ability every 15 seconds, Awakening Witch, and we're taking this as like the example because it's a good example. If you give Awakening Witch the ability to break through a frontal guard every 15 seconds, where does that help her exactly? Does that help her in 1v1s? You're probably still dead. You and I have both played Awakening Witch, right? You're still dead. Like you're there, unless you play that absolutely perfectly, there's almost no way that you're going to be able to kill somebody. Even if you do land the CC and you're a miracle worker.
It helps you run away.
Right, it helps you run away and swap servers faster, exactly. But like a skill like that with AoE on it could help you in large scale PvP, CC people and like do the damage that you do, right? So like depending on what skill you put it on, right? Let's say you put it on Barrage of Lightning or something like, okay, Barrage of Lightning can now go through frontal guards and bounds people. Okay. Awakening Witch just got a lot better in large scale P, and now Awakening Witch has split teleport. Done. That should have been done forever ago. I'm not sure why Awakening in both specs, Wizard and Witch, can't have a split teleport. But like, part of what you're saying is you're kind of implying that classes need to be handled case by case, and that's absolutely the case here. Like they're gonna have to go through every class case by case and make that class fundamentally good at what it's supposed to be good at. Ninja's not supposed to be good necessarily in large scale PvP. It is dominating in 1v1s, it's dominating in 3v3s. It's not necessarily supposed to be good in large scale PvP. Warrior is exactly the same way, right? So is Tamer. But like, you know, like I think that most of those classes that I mentioned right there already, like, they're actually just good already at some of their stuff, but other classes just they're not in a good spot. Like Awakening Corsair, it's just not in a super great spot right now. Awakening Witch is not in a super great spot right now. And there's plenty of other classes that kind of go along with it. Ideally, yeah, I think that they would approach this like, okay, every single class we're gonna look at this differently. But like, if you have to pick one of the options, I would like to pick a hybrid of 1 and 2. Again, because I feel like if you just pick option 2, which is what I've seen a lot of people suggest, you're just flanking assassins get so much better. It's like you're stupid if you're not playing a flanking assassin. You're like an idiot if you're not playing a flanking assassin like that. And it would kill most of the other classes in the game. So like, I think that there needs to be a little bit more of a hybrid option. I'm curious if you guys had to pick one, which one would you go with? I'm gonna stick with 1.
For me it would be 2 because it affects the PvE.
yeah, there it is. He's like, I have more frontal cards than PvE. We're gaming.
We can't forget about the PvEers, guys. This isn't just a PvP discussion, right? I'm curious, do you guys like this approach that they're taking with
I love this.
So I wanted to mention this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, sorry.
It's kind of funny because over the last 2 months on my stream, I've been saying, they really should do what old school RuneScape does, where they kind of just like let people vote. And literally, there must be a PA spy in my stream, because literally I've been saying that and like talking about it, and like it would be cool because then the community feels like then PA can blame the community because they voted on it, and then the community can only blame themselves for voting on the option that curses them in the end, right? And people are satisfied because they feel like they have a voice when they felt for the last few years they haven't had a voice in the community. And so I just kept talking about this, and I thought it was so funny. I'm like, holy shiz, what are the chances, like Christmas Miracle, they give us an option for high-end PvP changes and what direction you want the game to go? And I was like,
oh, blonde,
that's kind of fucking wild, bro.
This is not a Christmas Miracle. Okay,
this is like what they should be doing.
I think that they should be asked. I mean, unless they're going to hire someone for each individual part of the game, or hire a handful of people that are all experts and get an expert opinion on the game, which they haven't done and doesn't seem like they're going to do. Unless they're going to do that, which doesn't seem like it, yeah, I think they should have to leave it up to a vote or an option or something. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that always the majority is going to be the right opinion sometimes, because the majority can sometimes be stupid or wrong. But I mean, the only other option is they don't listen to anybody. Nobody feels like they get listened to, and they just keep doing whatever they're going to do for the game. You know what I mean? At least this way people feel like they have some semblance of feedback, or they're being listened to or whatnot, because a lot of people already don't feel that way.
I think one thing that I would like them to improve on is that whenever we get these like, big changes, it's done through global labs, and it's just like this one developer note, and I just feel like they could do a little bit better job like with communication and stuff, and maybe they could bring in players to like help.
Literally,
I feel like the developers could really benefit a lot if they have a proper discussion with people like Divios, who's had like, he's been playing for like, what he said he played for like over 40,000 hours for the game, and he seems like he knows a lot about PvP from what I read in his manifesto thing. And so
okay, I shouldn't have called it a manifesto. That implies that he's fucking. It implies that he's crazy. Okay,
it's
never
the
mind.
BDO manifesto.
Does anybody have a copy of it? I'd love to read the whole thing.
It's in the link. I linked it in the outline.
Oh,
Blue, hello. Did you read the outline?
Yeah, I did.
A manifesto is a public declaration of policy and aims before an election or political party candidate. So, like, literally, it's a manifesto.
Yeah, I think if they bring people who are, like Divius seems like he generally seems very concerned for the game and wants it to be better. And again, like, I
think it's a lot of people like that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that devs could do well with discussing that with the players who play the game a lot.
Well, they did do this with like the Arena of Arsha tournament winners, but they asked about individual classes, but
it didn't go over so well. It's just
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. If that's going to be the way they're going to do it, then because I can't remember who told me. Someone said that like each class just has like, was it you, Blue, that told me each class has one guy that works on it?
Yep.
And it just is that way, and that's the way it goes. So if you're playing a class that isn't getting updated, sorry, bro, you got the short end of the stick. You got the bad devs. Pick a different class and find a dev that loves their class, because that's not, what is it? Jay's gonna go to the Corsair guy and be like, "Hey, man, your players are upset. What are you doing, bro? Add some super armors. Add some damage. What are you doing?" And that guy's like, I'm good. And he's splashing in the water on the beach.
More otters. More.
More otters. He's on that island off the coast of Grana, the
bro,
little sand island with the otters.
No, there's a third guy in the room going, but what if we added a Shell Bale fairy skin? And we made it dyeable.
Oh no. Oh no.
I need an adult. So setting aside like PvP aspect of it, from a PvP or from a PvE perspective, I assume that you guys would like option 2. More frontal guards in PvE is just objectively a win, right?
I mean, 1 and 3 wouldn't really change anything for us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Oh yeah, they do. 1 said they were going to add protections to the game, but they were going to add gaps between your skills, and then they were going to add the ability to break through frontal guards for some classes, which that particular part doesn't necessarily affect you.
Right.
But adding protections does. And then number 3 said that they were going to keep the changes that they had on the global app before, which is why everyone's like,
yeah, I didn't look at that because everybody was already hating it so much. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even read it because so many people were just so violently throwing up about it. I was like, I'm not gonna read that if people are like that.
Yeah, I mean, like,
yeah.
I do think that adding protections across the board is typically a bad idea. Because again, in my experience with the game, like you said, like, oh no, people forget what it was like back then. Well, that's because everybody that fucking hated those changes left. And I say everybody because it was probably half of the current, like, we're at about half or less now of the like the PvPers that used to exist back in the game back then. I mean, there used to be 30 to 35 T1 guilds in the game. Just T1 guilds in the game. And then those changes were pushed through and it vaporized a lot of those T1 guilds. And we didn't see that resurgence again until Tuvala rolled around and we saw like the seasonal like kind of upsurgence of players. But like now this is the life that everybody knows. No one remembers what it was like. Now I'm not saying it was better back then necessarily, but as far as a PvP perspective, and this is how the developers are looking at it, I think adding more protections means you're going to lose more PvPers, which means Jay gets what he wants. And PvE lords reign supreme.
This is the world that Jay wants.
It is. It is what it is.
Hey, actually, okay, this is going to be surprising, but I actually did Arena of Solaire for the first time the other day. I did actually.
Fun?
I joined. So Choice and Wataru asked me to play with them, and so I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is an opportunity for me to go in. And I have to admit, I had a little bit of fun. Maybe it's because, I was queuing up with people that I knew and, they were really good and they were really excited to teach me. They told me to imagine the other team as a group of golems and do my PvE combo against them. And it worked most of the time. So
most of the time.
However, some of the golems in the other team started turning into Draconias, and that was a whole different story. But all in all, I actually enjoyed my time there. So hey,
I think it's fun doing AOS with friends.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
Like this is, again, I don't really get into PvP, but I think when you're there with like friends and you're just having fun, I think that's like the spirit of the spirit of PvP. I don't know, I'm being cringe a bit, but
no, true. There's nothing better than squatting out with your guild, going to a GBG on Arsha or something stupid.
Jay,
fighting over
family.
We're playing a massive multiplayer online game where we have blue skins for our fairies. There is nothing that you could say on this podcast I would consider cringe. Do you understand? Like, this is the state of the game in 2024 as we know it. Did you guys get anything big? I wanted to ask, did you guys get anything like Jay?
Hi.
You got your Pandebo, didn't you? For your enhancing.
Oh, yes. I
Sorry
did.
to pivot
I did get
a
my
little bit.
Pandebo. I also got my Dine and Doom this year as well. I actually got one extra T10 Pegasus like randomly. So I have 4 T10s now. It kind of guys, if it might seem like I'm boosted, But
It's
those
balanced
4
out.
T10s,
If you were there from the beginning, it balanced out.
I started from the beginning, and in total, I've done 153 T10 attempts to get 4 T10s. And so it's still like I'm still like a little bit below average apparently if
Yep.
you just average it out. But yeah,
You're good. I don't judge you, Jay. I've been there since the beginning. I remember.
Yeah.
So Jay,
Hi.
when you swap, you have the stable swap thing, right?
I do. Yes.
Okay, I just want you to understand that you are reported. But also, when you have the stable swap thing, if you kill
Yeah.
one of your Peggies, does the other Peggy like? Is it still there? Like, can you still swap to it?
The other peg. I don't think you can store 4 in it. You can only store the 3 different ones.
So what if you had 6?
6.
Hey, can you get another one?
I don't think you can get a second Kragnalos Sanctuary. It's tied to your, you know, the mount icon. When you right click the mount icon, you get like 3 little slots, and you can check it in like literally like a stable. And
Is
you
it
can
on all
only
your
put it-
characters?
You can actually made in from other characters as long as the horses are all checked in. You can go to another character from a different region and grab the sanctuary with their maid, and then you use the T10s on that.
It's not locked like a compass between different regions.
It's not locked like a compass. Yeah, it's not like a treasure.
What?
Even though it's a treasure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you
That's
just
sick.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know. Why can't you move the compass and the map around? This is bullshit, man.
Listen,
What?
listen. History of Dekia is coming out. Everybody's gonna be living like just drowning in compasses soon. Don't worry. It's gonna
Yeah,
be great.
nobody's gonna care.
Everybody's gonna have a compass.
Yeah, I'll probably try Dekia Histria when it comes up. Now, as for these PvP changes, I'm not sure. I think large scale PvP, if you add option 2, large scale PvP becomes. I think their original vision was to try to buff players in large scale PvP and make it easier. I think if you add option 2, it makes it way harder. I think adding just only frontal guards in large scale PvP, guess who benefits? Just the assassins.
It's going to have to be option 2 with like 50 steps after that, and they have to be on top of it. They cannot just call it a day and be like, "Oh, guys, we listened to the community. We're good. Pat ourselves on the back. Let's walk away."
I can't.
You know what else is making this balancing really hard as well is that there's like so many different kinds of gear caps for the different kinds of game modes in,
Right, that's what I was saying.
BDO, right?
Well,
so it's like, go ahead.
That's like one of the toughest things. What are we looking at when we're balancing that? What's the most played thing, right? Siege,
also
Guild Wars,
what's
AOS,
strange to me
a world.
is it seemed to me, because I have insider trading info that the developers told me when I went to the fucking Calpheon Ball. But like, because again, I got to sit down and actually talk with them and Jay, and well, I didn't like necessarily, but like I was like nonchalantly, like we're all standing around like eating our food, whatever, and we're just, ha ha ha. So how do you balance your game? You know what I mean? Like I'm just, very casually asking fundamentally core questions that I needed to understand about the game, and it's my understanding that when they told me that they were balancing around primarily AOS. At the time,
AOS.
I feel like AOS is like accessible to both new players, old players, people that want to PvE and don't really care about PvP. Even I'm interested in AOS just because I get to squad up with a few friends. It's a lot of fun.
Well, what was strange to me is that then they turn around and they felt like they needed to add all these protections so that players could be better in large scale PvP. That's very strange. It's a
tough
one and
criticism.
balance
It's like,
around it. You cannot balance around all 3. You can't. It's not possible.
Well, when we have a game mode that's played by the hardcore PvPers, quote unquote, and you want everybody to have fun, and having desync causes a lot of problems. So how do we get rid of desync? Well, we can't. Okay, but what if we just give everybody super armor so that they can just kind of continue to use their abilities, not get interrupted? I think that's where their mentality's at. It's like, well, at least people then, if they're fully super armored up, they can go in and just do a bunch of stuff and have fun. Like, they don't have to get CC'd and get annoyed by the desync and get caught out. They could just spam all their abilities and have fun. And I'm not gonna lie, I think that's literally all the thought process that's been put into it. I think that's it.
What do you think about so I wanted to add so for gear caps, right? For like there's like T1 nodes, T1, T2 nodes, T3, 4, 5. And they're all set at like different AP levels, but from what I'm understanding of like gear caps, like isn't it supposed to allow players to fight on a more equal ground with like equal stats? And I feel like because of like the different niches of these obscure itemizations that BDO has, like you can stack additional stats using like these niche accessories like chimera earrings, Kai necklaces, more external buffs. It doesn't seem like very equal anymore. So like on one hand, some people like like the different itemization options and you can put more effort into getting an advantage. And then on the other hand, I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of fighting equally as well.
The different node wars scale so differently that like certain classes and certain node wars feel way better and way worse in certain modes. And then like you have all those accessories and stuff, but I think there's just always going to be a meta. Whatever's like the 0.1% better, I feel like, especially in the NAEU competitive nature, we're going to go that way. Versus KR, it's different. They're like, it's not that they don't care about winning, but they care more about like the fun and doing whatever they like want to play. Play Zerkers and
you think about like simplifying like the gear caps, like reducing the amount so that there's not like 15 different kinds of gear caps in the game, because RBF is also has like this weird was it DR buff thingy when you're low, you know what I'm talking about, like when you're it has like a different rule set for the damage you take in RBF or something, and so it's kind of hard to gauge.
If you take a certain amount of damage, it like reduces it. It like does like a buffering, staggering effect. I don't know.
So I don't think that reducing the amount of caps in the game is going to help at all. I think that I like the caps in the game, but I think that like the varying PvP caps makes the game interesting on a fundamental level. I do think that decreasing the amount of stats there are in the game is a W. This is something that Tilt has introduced before to make it easier to understand for players, right? Instead of having evasion, hidden evasion, DR, hidden DR. Nope. You have evasion and you have DR, right? You don't have AP and hidden AP. You have AP, right? Like condensing all of these stats into a number that all players can understand. It's not like players that are like, well, how much gear do I need for orcs? Well, actually, you need to make sure that you have this, this, and this. Like if you have this much PvP damage, you know what I mean? Like, no, dude. Like I don't want to have to explain that. Condensing all of these caps helps in PvE as well as much as it helps in capped PvP, so that players can understand how to hit those caps, how close they are, and like what they need, right? Fundamentally. So like the change that I would like to see is condensing of all the different like stat types in the game. There's also all different kinds of damage. When it comes to like for example, like how is a new player supposed to understand that a Dark Knight just does 25% less damage to a Mystic? Like they're like, wait, why? Oh, it's just because there's the special chart. Yeah, like the class modifiers. Like, dude, like there's a way to condense all of this so that the game stays essentially in the state that it is. But it makes it easier to digest for a newer player, especially when they're approaching cap PvP like this. So,
should they maybe remove the class modifiers, or do you think it's important to keep that in?
What do you mean? Well, I mean, I do think that damage is kind of important. In some case, like, yeah, you do have to have class modifiers in some cases, but there's ways that you can work it in other aspects of the game. Instead of making it its own statistic. I think the reason they have it the way they have it now is so that they can adjust it more easily.
At any time. Yeah. It kind of, as much as it's annoying that we have another number on another thing that we then have to make sure that they're adjusting, because when's the last time we had those adjusted? Does anyone remember? But yeah, like I think that should be looked at more often, looking at like the way that classes interact. But again, how are they getting feedback? Are people just sending clips? Are they watching Node Wars and Sieges? Like, is this like, how do they know if it's a ball versus ball, who's doing what damage, and how they're going to be able to see like, oh, it was definitely this class that was doing a little too much damage? Like, I really don't know how they're going to get their feedback other than literally doing it in practice with their own stuff. But it's a lot. Apparently, it's a lot to ask PA to be on top of it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it is what it is. Okay, we are out of time now on the podcast for this week. So, for the very first podcast of the year, let's go closing thoughts. Jay, we'll start with you.
Closing thoughts. It's a critical time for BDO. I'm scared. but I think we'll be all right. Let's all hold hands and make it through together. You can hold my hand over at twitch.tv/JaconVTV before the T.
All right, and Blonde.
Like that segue?
It was good. Yeah.
PV ears up big, PvP ears. Well, we'll see, I guess. Good luck, guys. Catch me at twitch.tv/blondbeargrinder for the merchant ring and the LVI.
All right. I love parties. All right.
I love the party.
And I am Blue Squadron. There's always something happening on this channel. Whether it be on YouTube, where there's always videos released every day, in the Discord, which is always super active, people sitting in voice, very active community there. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. As for the podcast itself, you can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So you can listen to us on your way to work. From all of us here at the Old Moon Podcast, have a great rest of your week and a happy new year.